The 25th of August, 2025, 3:47 a.m. Akhtubinsk Air Base, Astrakhan Oblast, Russia. The night is a shroud of silence, broken only by the low, predatory hum of 4 Su-57 Felon Street Elf jets spooling up on the tarmac. Their angular fuselages, coated in radar-absorbing material, gleam faintly under the moonless sky. The Russian Aerospace Forces' elite 929th Flight Test Center is alive with purpose. Tonight they launch Operation Zvezda, a surgical strike to cripple NATO's early warning hub in eastern Poland, 1,200 kilometers away. The target, a US-operated AN/TPY-2 radar station near Rzeszów, critical for tracking ballistic missiles over Europe. No one in NATO suspects the audacity of what's coming. The Su-57 second liftoff in eerie unison, their afterburners flaring blue before dimming to near invisibility. Flying at Mach 1.8, they hug the terrain at 200 feet, skimming Russian planes toward the Belarusian border. Their mission is clear: exploit a 6-minute window of chaos in NATO's air defense network, a radar dead zone engineered by a Russian cyber attack on NATO's integrated air and missile defense system. The pilots, handpicked from Russia's best, know the stakes. Failure means war. Success means rewriting the balance of power. At 4:12 a.m. over the Pripyat marshes, the Su-57 second activate their Bielka radar suites, scanning for threats. Suddenly their displays flicker a glitch? No, it's deliberate. A Russian military satellite, Cosmos 2576, has just unleashed a burst of electromagnetic interference, blinding NATO's radar chain from Norway to Poland. For 6 minutes, the Su-57 second are ghosts, slicing through the night undetected. The lead pilot, Major Viktor Sokol Kovalenko, keys his encrypted comms, Wraith Flight, execute. The jets split into 2 pairs, diving toward Rzeszów, armed with Kh-69 stealth cruise missiles, each capable of leveling a city block. But NATO isn't asleep. At Ramstein Air Base, Germany, US F-35 Lightning IIs are on high alert, scrambled after a faint anomaly pings their systems. The F-35 second, operating from Powidz Air Base in Poland, are already airborne, their AN/APG-81 radars probing the dark. Captain Sarah Viper Hayes, leading the US squadron, senses something wrong. "They're too quiet," she mutters, her eyes locked on her helmet-mounted display. The F-35 second climbed to 40,000 feet, their stealth profiles making them near invisible, waiting to pounce. At 4:18 a.m., the Su-57 second are 50 kilometers from Rzeszów. Their missiles lock onto the AN/TPY-2's coordinates. Kovalenko's heart pounds as he prepares to fire, then his threat warning screams. A missile lock? Impossible. NATO's radars are down, but the lock persists, coming from nowhere. Break formation. He barks. The Su-57 second scatter, jinking hard to evade. One missile launches, streaking toward the radar station. It detonates mid-air, intercepted by an unseen Patriot PAC-3 battery. The sky erupts in fire. Then, a chilling transmission crackles through Kovalenko's headset, relayed from a German reconnaissance satellite orbiting 600 kilometers above. "Wraith Flight, you're not alone." The voice is calm, almost mocking. Kovalenko scans his sensors, nothing. But the satellite's data feed shows a faint thermal signature trailing his squadron. Not a jet, not a drone, something else. Something NATO shouldn't have. As the Su-57 second regroup, a single question burns: who or what is hunting them? The 25th of August, 2025, 4:22 a.m. The Baltic Sea, 80 kilometers east of Gotland, Sweden. The night sky is a void, pierced only by the fleeting afterburners of 4 Russian Su-57 felons, now retreating from their failed strike on Rzeszów. Major Viktor Sokol Kovalenko grips his controls, his squadron shaken by the German satellite's cryptic warning, "You're not alone." The Su-57 second, still cloaked in their stealth profiles, The race at Mach 1.6 toward Kaliningrad, Russia's Baltic enclave. Their Byelka radars sweep the darkness, finding nothing, yet the unease is palpable. NATO's counterattack is coming, and it's closer than they think. At 4:24 a.m., two U.S. F-35 Lightning IIs, led by Captain Sarah Viper Hayes, stalk the Russians from 30,000 feet above. Operating from Powidz Air Base, Poland, the F-35 Second are armed with AIM 120D AMRAAM missiles designed for beyond visual range kills. Hayes's AN APG-81 radar paints faint signatures of the SU-57 Second, their stealth compromised by the earlier missile launch. She knows the Russian cyber attack blinded NATO's radars for 6 minutes, but that window has closed. Now, it's her turn. Lock acquired, she whispers, her helmet-mounted display flashing red. She fires. The Baltic erupts, and AMRAAM streaks toward Wraith flight, its active radar homing in. Kovalenko's threat warning blares. Flares, now, he orders. The Su-57 Second release infrared decoys, brilliant magnesium bursts lighting the sky. The missile veers, detonating harmlessly. But then, disaster. One F-35 vanishes from NATO's radar net, a clean hit, the Russians think. Kovalenko's wingman, Captain Dmitry Volkodav Petrov, confirms. Target eliminated. Moscow's command center erupts in cheers, broadcasting the kill to the world, a propaganda victory. But it's a lie. The downed F-35 was a decoy, an MQ-20 Avenger Drive 1, rigged with a radar signature mimicking a Lightning II. The US had anticipated Russia's move, sacrificing the drone to lure the Su-57 Second into a trap. At 4:25 a.m., a second F-35, hidden in the radar clutter, emerges 10 kilometers behind Wraith flight. Its pilot, Lieutenant James Spectre Cole, engages his distributed aperture system, feeding real-time infrared data to his missiles. The world's first close-range dogfight between fifth-generation stealth jets begins. The Su-57 Second scatter, banking hard at 7 Gs. Kovalenko pulls a high-alpha maneuver, his jets thrust vectoring nozzles roaring to outturn the F-35. Cole's F-35 counters with a post-stall climb, its stealth coating absorbing the Su-57's radar pings. Missiles fly AIM-9X sidewinders from the F-35 R-77 Second from the Su-57. The sky becomes a lattice of contrails and explosions. Petrov's Su-57 takes a hit. His jet spirals, trailing fire into the Baltic's icy depths. No ejection, no signal. The Russians are down to 3. Kovalenko's mind races. The F-35 Second shouldn't have locked them so fast. NATO's radar was offline, or was it? He replays the satellite warning in his head. Not alone. The answer clicks. The Americans have a new system, something beyond their known electronic warfare suite. A leaked Russian intel report had mentioned DARPA's Phantom Gate, a rumored jamming tech capable of disrupting stealth radar from 200 kilometers. If it's real, the Su-57 Second are sitting ducks. On the ground, NATO's Baltic air policing mission scrambles additional F-35 Second from Amari Air Base, Estonia. Russian forces in Kaliningrad detect the surge, raising their S-400 systems to full alert. The dogfight has escalated into a regional flashpoint. Moscow orders a counterstrike, a salvo of 3 M54 caliber missiles from a Russian frigate in the Baltic, targeting NATO's radar at Gotland. The missiles launch at 4:27 a.m., skimming the waves at Mach 2.9. NATO's Aegis destroyers stationed off Denmark intercept half the salvo with SM-6 missiles. The rest detonate harmlessly, but the message is clear: Russia is doubling down. Hayes, now leading the F-35 Second, breaks off the dogfight to avoid escalation. Her squadron vanishes into the clouds, their stealth regained. Kovalenko limps back to Kaliningrad, his surviving jets battered. He reports the loss, but Moscow suppresses the truth, claiming a decisive victory. The world buys it for now. In a secure bunker at Ramstein, analysts pore over the dogfight's data. The German satellite's feed reveals a chilling detail. A faint signal buried in the Su-57's telemetry wasn't Russian. It was Chinese. A single line of code embedded in the jet's avionics had briefly activated during the fight, broadcasting to an unknown recipient. The discovery sends shockwaves through NATO's chain of command. China, a silent player, is in the game. The 25th of August, 2025, 5:03 a.m. Kaliningrad, Russia. The 3 surviving Su-57 felons of Wraith flight limp into the 689th Fighter Regiment's airbase, their stealth coatings scarred from the Baltic dogfight. Major Viktor Sokol Kovalenko steps from his cockpit, his face a mask of fury and doubt. The loss of Captain Petrov's jet and the Chinese signal buried in their avionics has shattered his trust. Moscow's victory broadcast rings hollow. NATO's F-35 second outmaneuvered them, and the mysterious Phantom Gate technology turned their stealth advantage into a liability. Kovalenko demands answers, but his superiors are silent, their eyes darting to encrypted screens. At Ramstein Air Base, Germany, Captain Sarah Viper Hayes briefs NATO commanders. The intercepted Chinese signal from the Su-57's telemetry is no fluke. It's a deliberate backdoor coded into the jet's NO-36 Bielka radar system. Analysts at the U.S. Cyber Command Fort Meade traced the signal's destination, a server in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, masked as a civilian telecom hub. The revelation ignites a firestorm. Cambodia, a Chinese ally, has no known role in 5th-generation fighter tech. Hayes pushes for a deeper probe, but her superiors hesitate. Escalating against China risks a global crisis. Yet the data is undeniable. Someone fed the Su-57's electronic warfare protocols to the US, enabling Phantom Gate to jam the jets mid-fight. The Phantom Gate system, a DARPA Lockheed Martin project, is a game-changer. Deployed on a modified E-3 Sentry AWACS orbiting over the North Sea, it projects a 200 kilometer electromagnetic disruption field, scrambling enemy radar and missile guidance. Its activation during the Baltic clash blinded the Su-57 second, allowing the F-35 second to strike unseen. But the system's success hides a darker truth. It was tailored to exploit specific vulnerabilities in the Su-57's avionics, vulnerabilities only a traitor could have revealed. A leaked Russian Aerospace Forces report, smuggled to NATO via a Polish intelligence operative, confirms the betrayal. A senior engineer at Sukhoi Design Bureau, codenamed Icarus, sold the protocols for $10 million through a Cambodian intermediary. At 5:47 a.m., the stakes escalate. A Russian Cosmos 2576 spy satellite, critical for tracking NATO movements, goes dark for 45 minutes during the dogfight. Russian space forces in Plesetsk scramble to restore it, but the outage's timing, coinciding with the F-35 ambush, raises suspicions of sabotage. Kovalenko, now in a secure Kaliningrad bunker, reviews the satellite's last transmission. It shows a faint anomaly, a high-altitude object, not a jet, trailing Wraith flight. He cross-references NATO's known assets. Nothing matches. The object's thermal signature suggests a hypersonic platform, possibly a US X-37B spaceplane, rumored to carry experimental electronic warfare payloads. If true, the US has weaponized space in ways Russia never anticipated. The action surges. At 6:12 a.m., NATO launches a counter-strike. 2 F-35 second, armed with AGM-158 JASSM-ER stealth missiles, take off from Amari Air Base, Estonia, targeting a Russian S-400 battery in Kaliningrad. The missiles, flying at 900 km per hour, evade detection until they're 20 kilometers out. Russian defenses fire frantically, downing one, but the second strikes, obliterating a radar array. Kaliningrad's air defenses are crippled, exposing the enclave to further NATO incursions. Kovalenko, monitoring the attack, orders a desperate counter. A squadron of MiG-31, second armed with R-37M hypersonic missiles, scrambles to intercept. The Baltic sky ignites again, with NATO and Russian jets weaving through a storm of chaff and flares. Amid the chaos, a deeper conspiracy unravels. In Phnom Penh, a U.S. Special Forces team operating covertly from a safe house intercepts a second transmission from the same server. It's not just Chinese, it's a joint operation. Cambodian military officials, backed by Chinese advisors, are funneling SU-57 data to a third party. The team hacks the server, uncovering a chilling directive: neutralize Icarus, secure the asset. The traitor's life is now a bargaining chip in a shadow war. As Kovalenko prepares for another sortie, his radio crackles with an unauthorized signal. A voice, distorted but unmistakably Russian, whispers, "Sokol, they know about Icarus, and they know you're next." The transmission cuts off. Kovalenko freezes, staring at his Su-57. Etched into the cockpit panel, barely visible, is a symbol, a crimson dragon, the mark of China's Ministry of State Security. The 25th of August, 2025, 7:15 a.m., Murmansk Oblast, Russia, near the Finnish border. The Arctic dawn is a gray smear through dense fog, cloaking the snow-dusted taiga. Major Viktor Sokol Kovalenko pilots one of 3 surviving Su-57 felons, rerouted to Severomorsk 3 Air Base after the Kaliningrad debacle. The Crimson Dragon symbol etched in his cockpit haunts him, a mark of betrayal tied to China's Ministry of State Security. The Russian aerospace forces are in disarray, their propaganda victory shattered by the loss of 2 jets and the exposure of Icarus, the traitor who leaked Su-57 protocols. Moscow orders a retreat to regroup, but NATO smells blood. The Su-57 second fly low at 300 feet, their stealth systems strained after hours of combat. Kovalenko's radar flickers, still rattled by the Phantom Gate jamming that crippled them over the Baltic. His squadron's mission is simple: reach Murmansk, refuel, and fortify Russia's Arctic defenses. But at 7:22 a.m., 50 kilometers from the Finnish border, disaster strikes. 2 Su-57 second, piloted by Lieutenants Alexei Grom-Volkov and Irina Zvezda Petrova, plummet into the frozen wilderness. No missile warnings, no ejector seat signals, just silence. Russian ground crews dispatched from Pechenga find the wreckage in a smoldering crater. The official report cites technical failure, but Kovalenko knows better. Something hunted them. At Ramstein Air Base, Captain Sarah Viper Hayes monitors the Russian retreat via a NATO E-7 Wedgetail AWACS orbiting over Norway. The F-35 squadron she leads, now reinforced at Rovaniemi Air Base, Finland, is poised for a surgical strike. NATO intelligence confirms Phantom Gate was only part of the equation. A long-range electronic warfare system, codenamed Spectre Veil, was deployed from a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon over the Barents Sea. This classified Raytheon system, capable of disrupting avionics from 300 kilometers, induced cascading failures in the Su-57 second flight control systems, forcing them down. Hayes pushes for a follow-up attack to finish Wraith flight, but her commanders hesitate, wary of escalating near Russia's nuclear submarine hub in Severomorsk. The fog thickens as Kovalenko's lone Su-57 streaks toward Murmansk. His threat warning spikes a NATO missile lock from an unseen F-35. At 7:29 a.m., 2 AGM-158C LRASM missiles, launched from 200 kilometers away, scream through the mist at Mach 0.9. Kovalenko deploys chaff and jinks hard, his jet's thrust vectoring pushing 9 Gs. One missile misses, detonating in the forest below, sending pines exploding into splinters. The second grazes his wing, shredding stealth coating but sparing the airframe. He dives into a canyon, skimming jagged cliffs to shake the pursuit. His radio crackles with static, then a voice encrypted, Russian, but not his chain of command. Sokol abort, they've cracked the Dragon. On the ground, Russian recovery teams comb the Su-57 wrecks. In Volkov's burnt-out cockpit, they find a device not in Sukhoi's blueprints, a compact module, its casing stamped with a faded Raytheon logo. It's a signal interceptor, designed to override the jet's avionics and transmit real-time data to an external source. Analysis reveals it was installed during maintenance in Khabarovsk, a facility with Chinese technicians on contract. The device wasn't American, it was a Chinese plant masquerading as US. Tech to deflect suspicion. The dragon symbol ties it to Phnom Penh's server, confirming a Chinese-Cambodian plot to sabotage Russia's air campaign while framing the US. The geopolitical fallout is immediate. NATO's Baltic members Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania demand a full blockade of Kaliningrad, citing Russia's missile strikes. Finland, newly integrated into NATO, deploys Leopard 2, a 7 tanks along its border, anticipating Russian retaliation. Moscow, humiliated, activates its Borai-class submarines in the Barents Sea, armed with Bulava missiles, signaling a nuclear posture. The Arctic teeters on the brink of war. Hayes, now airborne in her F-35, tracks Kovalenko's jet. Her orders are clear: neutralize the last Su-57 before it reaches Severomorsk. But a new intelligence feed from a Norwegian Eland station shifts her focus. The Chinese signal from Phnom Penh wasn't just feeding data, it was controlling the Raytheon device remotely, turning the Su-57 second into unwitting spies. The US wasn't the only one exploiting Icarus. China played both sides, leaking Russian tech to NATO while sabotaging the jets to weaken Moscow. As Kovalenko nears Murmansk, his radar picks up a new signature. Not an F-35, but a swarm of small, high-speed objects. Drones. Unmarked, silent, and closing fast. They're not Russian, not NATO. His sensors detect a faint transmission frequency, identical to the Phnom Penh server. Before he can react, his cockpit screens go black, overridden by a single image, a crimson dragon pulsing like a heartbeat. The 25th of August, 2025, 9:07 a.m. Barents Sea, 200 kilometers north of Murmansk. The Arctic air bites like a blade, but the sky is a battlefield. Major Viktor Sokol Kovalenko, sole survivor of Wraith flight, lands his battered Su-57 at Severomorsk 3 airbase, the Crimson Dragon symbol in his cockpit, a constant reminder of betrayal. The Chinese sabotage masked as Raytheon tech has crippled Russia's air campaign, and the drone swarm that blacked out his systems near the Finnish border signals a new unseen enemy. Moscow, humiliated by NATO's Spectre Veil and the loss of 2 Su-57 second, escalates to a desperate gambit: orbital warfare. At 9:12 a.m., Russia activates its classified Polyus 2 space interference platform, a relic of Cold War tech modernized at Plesetsk Cosmodrome. Orbiting at 400 kilometers, it emits a high-energy microwave pulse, targeting US GPS satellites in the Iridium constellation. The pulse disrupts signals across the Arctic Circle, grounding commercial flights and scrambling NATO's missile guidance systems for 6 minutes. Russian Borai-class submarines, lurking beneath the Barents Sea, exploit the chaos, repositioning their RSM-56 Bulava missiles to threaten NATO's northern flank. Kovalenko, now in a command bunker, watches the operation unfold on a secure feed, his trust in his chain of command eroding. The dragon symbol suggests China's hand, but why would an ally sabotage their jets? At Ramstein Air Base, Captain Sarah Viper Hayes briefs a NATO crisis team. The Chinese signal from the Su-57 Rex, traced to Phnom Penh, wasn't just sabotage, it was a test. US Cyber Command decrypts fragments of the signal, revealing it activated the rogue devices to relay Russian flight data to a Chinese Beidou satellite. The implications are chilling. China is playing Russia and NATO against each other, weakening both while staying in the shadows. Hayes pushes for a counterstrike, but NATO's focus shifts skyward. The Polyus 2 pulse has triggered a new threat, a direct clash in the stratosphere. At 9:18 a.m., a US E-3 Sentry AWACS operating from Erland Air Base, Norway, engages a Russian A-100 AWACS over the Arctic Circle. The E-3, equipped with AN/APY-2 radar, detects the Russian jet's attempt to jam NATO communications. In response, the US deploys an experimental ALQ-249 next-generation jammer mounted on an EA 18-gram Growler Escort. The jammer floods the A-100 sensors, forcing it to retreat, but the skies grow hotter. Two Russian MiG-31 armed with R-37M hypersonic missiles streak from Severomorsk, targeting the E-3, a U.S. F-35 piloted by Lieutenant James Spector Cole intercepts, firing an AIM-260 JATM missile. The MiG-31 evade, but the exchange sends shockwaves through global markets. GPS disruptions halt trading for 6 minutes. Amid the chaos, a U.S. Virginia-class submarine, USS Delaware, surfaces briefly in the Norwegian Sea. At 9:25 a.m., it launches a Ghost satellite from a modified missile tube, a classified DARPA project codenamed SHADE. The satellite, designed for low-orbit electronic warfare, is meant to counter Polyus II, but NATO analysts at SHAPE headquarters in Mons, Belgium, detect an anomaly. The satellite's transponder is broadcasting on China's Beidou frequency, not US. Military bans. The launch wasn't authorized by the Pentagon, it was a covert operation executed under a false flag. Hayes, reviewing the data, realizes the US has been duped. China, not America, controls the satellite. The discovery solves part of the Phnom Penh mystery. China's backdoor in the SU-57 was a prelude to a larger plan. By manipulating both Russian and NATO systems, China aims to destabilize the Arctic, securing its own access to untapped oil and gas reserves under the melting ice. The SHADE satellite, disguised as American, is a Chinese asset, capable of disabling both NATO and Russian GPS permanently if activated. The Arctic is no longer a Russia-NATO conflict, it's a three-way chess game. Kovalenko, now tasked with leading a recovery mission, boards a Mi-26 helicopter to the Su-57 crash site near Finland. Russian Spetsnaz secure the perimeter, but the fog hides a new threat. At 9:40 a.m., a swarm of unmarked drones, identical to those that attacked him, emerges from the mist. Armed with Chinese Norinco micro-missiles, they strike the Spetsnaz, killing 6 in seconds. Kovalenko's team returns fire with AK-12 rifles, downing 2 drones, but the rest vanish. The wreckage yields another clue, a second Raytheon-branded device rigged to self-destruct. Before it does, Kovalenko's technician extracts a fragment of code, revealing a destination, a Chinese military facility in Djibouti.